everybody, and welcome back to the Across the Table podcast. This is Dylan here. We're not joined by Kyle today, as I am in Sacramento visiting my parents for the weekend, or midweek, or whatever it is. Anyway, I am joined today by Dave Neves, my stepfather. Dave, would you like to say hello? Introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Dave Neves, Dylan's stepfather, and that's pretty much it right now, who I am.
I think there's a bit more, I guess, if there's the quarantine to worry about, but why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? What is it you do? What is it you've done? What are your aspirations, your dreams, your hopes?
I'm an elementary school principal. I have been a district administrator. I have been with the same district now for 38 years. My school has over 800 kids. I'm married to your mother.
How are you? I hadn't noticed.
I enjoy that role probably more than any of my others. I am the father of 5 daughters. I have 5 grandchildren, one of which is actually a male. And I like to recognize my stepson and my stepdaughter in that number, so that means I have 7 children. So actually I have a male son, which didn't happen until...
No, you got a bit more of a track record for female offspring.
Yeah, wiping... Yeah. So...
Thank you for that. All right, anyway, let's keep it clean. Going into your track record with the school district, you've done quite a bit more than just education. Like your upbringing, you have worked a fair few jobs. Would you say that having had a career outside of education has helped inform you in terms of how you handle this job?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm probably the only principal of an elementary school in a public school district in California that you'll ever meet that has never taught a day in his life. So I don't hold a teaching credential. I came into this position through social work. I was a school social worker in the school district, and prior to that, I was in the Air Force for 4 years during the Vietnam War. I did not see combat. I did not go to Vietnam, but I was twice on a plane to go to Saigon because I was a medic, and twice we landed in Germany. I was stationed in England. We landed in Germany, and then the orders were rescinded, and I flew back to England. So, I fully expected I was going to be an X-ray tech when I got out of the Air Force, but circumstances of California licensing requirements didn't recognize my Air Force training, so I ended up going to a community college because I could get the GI Bill, and ended up straying away from that career path and found myself going into counseling and getting my master's degree in social work. And I subsidized my lifestyle by being a singer and a stand-up comic and a musician.
Well, that's quite a lot of not teaching, or not even not teaching, not doing anything in the educational sector. What was it that moved you into becoming a principal?
So early on, and when I say early on, I want to say 1981, 1982, I was an intern with the foster youth program. Now, prior to getting into grad school, I worked at the children's home, and it was a home for children who were emotionally disturbed, children who were wards of the court, who had been severely abused, etc., etc. So when I was hired out of my internship, I was working with foster kids, and the budget started to dry up. So I was farmed out to the alternative high schools. So I would end up spending the next couple of years kind of attending to troubled teenagers and kids who were in foster placement or who were in group homes. And then a tragedy happened in our school district, and on the last day of school, a school bus carrying a bunch of kids to a theme park in California rammed into the back of a dairy truck on the highway, killing one of the students, 6th graders. And that bus was full of survivors, but the question on the last day of school, who's going to provide support counseling for these kids that witnessed their classmate getting killed? And there wasn't an answer for that. And so I spent the summer working with many of the survivors of that bus crash. And so consequently, in the fall, the person that was in charge of all the truancy and those types of programs decided to take another position, and I was appointed to the position. So now I was in the position of running after kids who were truant from school, and kids that were on drugs, and kids that were committing crimes at school. And basically what I discovered from that moment until 1993 was, if we could intervene early, we might alter the lifetime pathways of these kids. And so I went to our associate superintendent at the time, and I said I'd like to be a vice principal, because I had the qualifying administrative credential. And he said, no, nobody would ever hire you because you've never been a teacher, but nice thought. So I thought, okay, if it's impossible, that just means it's going to take a little longer. And so I found myself accepting a position as a halftime VP and a halftime counselor in an elementary and a middle school in Gonzales, California. Both schools are on the same piece of property. It was a nice gateway position. So in the fall of 93, I took that position. In the summer of 94, I came back to my school district as a VP. I did that for 4 years in 2 different schools, and in 1998, I acquired my first principalship.
Well, you mentioned intervening early could help prevent sort of the slippery slope situation. Do you have any?
The huge slippery slope for children isn't so much the children as much as their parents.
Right. Okay.
So as a school principal for many, many, many years, parents who do not take attendance seriously, especially in the most critical year, which is kindergarten, tend to send a message, however subliminal, to their kids that school isn't actually important. And when school isn't important, there's no motivation on the child's part to succeed.
Okay.
I also have parents who are unfortunately were not successful students, and because they were not successful students growing up, they also send a message to their child that it's okay to not be successful because they weren't as well. Okay. And a lot of people my age are quite successful, having never attended a day of school after 7th grade. Excuse me. But that's not the world we live in. So to me, the formative years of kindergarten through 6th grade are the years that parents have to absolutely impose the belief that education is powerful, education is vital, and having high expectations for kids learning. I'm not talking about honor roll and straight A's. I'm talking about the value.
Keeping involvement and understanding that
exactly
self-betterment is a path to success.
And so being a school, my motivation to become a school principal was built on the foundation of me being a social worker. And my entire practice as a school administrator is 100% about connecting with kids and giving, if they don't have the connections at home that motivate them to be good students, good meaning, studious, socially and emotionally healthy, then my job is to help create teachers who can build those bonds with students, because if a kid has someone that they believe in, believes in them, that kid has a pathway to success. If a child walks into the classroom and the parents don't care and they've got a deadbeat teacher that doesn't care, the child is doomed.
There's not really much reason to try and succeed.
Because intrinsic motivation in the children, in terms of book work, is almost non-existent. There's no payoff for a child to be interested in being the best in math or reading or writing or science if nobody in that child's universe gives a hoot about that child's success.
Excuse me, sorry. Do you have any stories about specific instances where you think that early intervention and creating that environment for a student, do you have any examples of where you believe that worked?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about living this long and staying, I'm still employed. So because I'm reachable and because kids can find me, I don't think I do that wonderful for kids or their families. I think I'm just doing my job. But every now and then, a parent or a child that I have worked with comes back and tells me that I am absolutely one of the reasons that they are living a successful and healthy life right now.
Excellent.
And that validation wakes me up every day and motivates me to continue going to work. I have parents and students and colleagues and bosses that have said wonderful things to me about who I am, but I think maybe the best thing about me is I don't believe half of it. And so my desire to be that person keeps me moving.
Good. Well, do you have any advice, knowing that your approach to becoming a principal, do you have any advice for people, not even necessarily for becoming a principal, but for realizing something that they want to be? Do you have any advice for people in terms of how to achieve that?
My greatest recommendation for anybody that is looking at or moving into or advancing into leadership positions is to surround yourself with the best people that you can find. Listen to them, but most importantly, get out of their way. Don't micromanage them. If you trust them, let them do their work.
Know how to delegate.
And when there's an achievement, you celebrate their success. When there's a failure, you take responsibility. The buck stops with me, but the reality is it's my team. It's those people that come to school every day because it's what they believe in. Those are the people I have to support. I support more kids by supporting my teachers.
Excellent.
So there you have it.
Well, what's one of your favorite memories from your career? It doesn't have to just be in education. That's the whole career. One of your favorite memories. And for any reason.
Many years ago, there was a appliance and television store in Sacramento that was taken hostage by 4 young men. 2 of them had just been expelled from my school district a few weeks prior by me.
Okay.
At the time, I was the officer that represented the district for high school and junior high school kids.
Was this when you were counseling?
So this is when I was a district office administrator.
Gotcha.
Okay, so, and I failed to bring that up. Between the counseling and the administrative position in Gonzales, I had elevated into a position where I was the district administrator that tried the cases of kids who broke the laws. So 2 of these kids got upset with their vice principal at their high school, and they tried to set the auto simulator, the trailer that teaches kids how to drive. They tried to set it on fire. They were unsuccessful, but they were apprehended, and then the administrator of that high school wanted these kids expelled.
Which I don't blame them. That's dangerous and very expensive.
It was a little bit of a slippery slope, as we mentioned earlier. Try saying those 2 words 5 times quickly. In terms of certainly the severity of their intention was an expellable offense. So anyway, long story short, we got legal advice, blah, blah, blah. We went through the hearing. The kids were expelled. There was an older brother of one of the kids and another kid that wasn't expelled for whatever reason. So a couple of weeks later, there's a store called The Good Guys in Sacramento, California. And the 4 of these youngsters decided to go into Good Guys during normal business hours, shut the doors, and barricade themselves and hold all the customers and the staff hostage. This is something you can Google. It's the Good Guy shooting. Anyway, so long story short, all but one of the boys were killed. The older brother that wasn't a student survived and is serving life in prison, as I understand it. And several civilians and I think a few law enforcement officers were killed because something went south and the whole thing went crazy. So here I was with a family that 2 weeks earlier I had to deliver them expulsion news that their sons are going to be expelled, but I tried to do it in such a way that was compassionate and caring and supportive, and to build a path for these 2 boys to return to school in the fall. And it was that family that reached out and wanted my support when their sons were killed. And I will never forget to this day. I mean, I can still recall trying to keep reporters from going into their little tiny apartment, but they brought me inside their apartment because their family needed comfort, and it was me they sought after for that. So I'll never forget that. That's my one big thing.
Well, that's, I guess, unfortunate. It doesn't necessarily sum that up, but well, anyway, let's change tack,
Okay.
because I believe that's quite a bit there for in terms of the education. So let's go over to.
Do you want a happier memory?
Oh, well, see, we can do a happier memory. I'm not trying to
Okay.
bring
Well,
the mood down.
my last name is Neves, Neves, and so when you spell it backwards, it's Seven or the number 7.
What is it?
So when I start working with kindergarten students, sometimes remembering names is difficult, so I can be Dr. 7 or Mr. 7.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the days when we used to do standardized tests and big rallies for that, I actually became an alter ego named Dr. 7 and did a dance on top of the multi-purpose room
As
with
you do.
kids. So every now and then I'll be at one of my local markets and a full-grown adult will come up to me and go, "Hey, Dr. 7, how you doing?" And so, yeah, that's my happier memory there.
Fantastic.
To brighten up the gray one I
There
just
you
shared
go.
with you.
Well, I was going with that initial question there was in terms of how do you unwind, because you have a stressful job. I think anybody would attest to that. No.
I mentioned earlier I was a musician and a stand-up, and so I have acquired this few pieces of equipment, and I've converted a room into like a little music studio. And even though I don't perform publicly anymore, I had hoped I was going to get back out there till everything shut down.
Yeah.
But I enjoy going in and recording myself, and then adding instrumentation and harmonies and stuff. And so that's how I take care of myself. And mention I'm married to your mom. We love to travel when we can.
When you can, of course.
We're lovers of all things water, so Pacific Grove, Maui, Kauai. And we have a dog that keeps us on our toes. So when I do an inventory of things that I do that are restorative, I have quite a good stash
Excellent.
of things.
So you mentioned not just performing music, but also stand-up. How would you say that that's affected your music lately, specifically in response to the coronavirus?
Well, so there's like 40 some odd elementary school principals in my school district. And, I've always felt like the kind of odd man out, because they were all teachers and they're all serious and I'm kind of serious. And so since the virus hit and we've been on isolation, I've decided to rewrite 3 different songs, basically one a week, that I have provided to my team and to my staff. One's Still Staying Alive. It's a cover that I do of Bee Gees' Staying Alive. Woke Up This Morning Still Feeling Fine, which is an old Hermit songs. And then I did a parody on the song The Way by Fastball, that indicts parents thinking that teaching was easy till they got stuck with their kids.
There you go.
And I'm a people person, so being a stand-up before has prepared me to deal with lots of crazy stuff in the world I have to deal with, and I enjoy making people smile. It makes me happy.
That's good. All right. Is there anything about your music career that you'd like to share? Some what got you started with that?
I won't name her, but so when I was in high school, junior high school went 7th, 8th, 9th, and then high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th. So I graduated in high school in 1969, so in the fall of 66, I guess, I'm a 10th grader at Sac High. And I was a little bit of an awkward social wallflower.
I have no means to relate to that whatsoever, especially about 10th grade.
I was extremely skinny and awkward. Anyway, so long story short, I really got kind of interested because one of my classmates in middle school, his brother was getting to be really good at guitar. So I had a guitar and I was trying to learn chords on the dang thing, and I just wasn't getting anywhere with it. Looking back, it was a very low quality guitar. I'm surprised I didn't amputate my fingers trying to play it. But long story short, is I asked this girl to the one and only dance I ever went in high school. And when I say one and only, it's because that was a disaster. So we get to the dance, and there's a live band. And if I'm not mistaken, Timothy B. Schmidt, who's now in the Eagles, was in that band.
Interesting. Okay.
At the time. But anyway, so...
But Eagles are still around, are they?
No, the Eagles...
I was going to say.
The Eagles are still around, but Timothy B. Schmidt is from Sacramento.
I did not know that. Okay.
And he took over for bass midway through the Eagles' development, blah, blah, blah. So I take this girl to the dance at Sacramento High School, and, I'm trying to do what all healthy, red-blooded American boys of 1966 were doing, which was to get some affection. And so I kind of went in during a slow dance for the kiss, and I was not successful. So then the band did a really fast song, and it was by a group called Them, which was then fronted by Van Morrison, and the song was Gloria. And the girl that I was with told me if I could play guitar like that, she would kiss me. And so my entrance into
where it all started.
Motivation to please women began at that moment. So took her home, no kiss at the door, and probably stayed up. Probably would have gotten home around 11:30 midnight. Mm-hmm. I probably stayed up on into the next morning, jamming out those 3 chords until I finally got the progression necessary and the timing and the tempo, and went to her house with my guitar because I wasn't enough of a nerd being the skinniest guy in school. And I played those 3 chords for her and sang my little Gloria, Gloria bit, and got the kiss. From then on, it was like, get out of my way. I'm going to be a rock and roll star, and I'm going to have all the women I ever want in my life.
That happened. That's how your life went.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went. So, or no, wait, that was somebody else's life. Mine was a bit different.
Was it now? Okay.
Yeah. I was eventually surrounded by girls, but they were my daughters, so that was pretty creepy. And
it's an odd segue there, but all right. So that's how you started playing guitar. How did you start performing guitar?
Okay, so I need to paint the picture of the times. It's now. I'm advancing in my ability to play exponentially. I am now not playing just 3 chords. I'm playing 4, maybe even 6.
4 whole chords, my goodness.
And I can sing. Okay. So all around Sacramento, there was these little church-sponsored coffee houses for the teens. There was a few pizza parlors, even a few bars that were featuring live music. And this is 1967, 68. When if you could play guitar and you could sing, and you could stay out past curfew, you were Bob Dylan, or you were Buffalo Springfield, or you were not quite Crosby, Stills and Nash, because they hadn't come up and they hadn't evolved until the next year in '69 at Woodstock. But so I was managing to find myself gigs, unpaid gigs at any place that had live music. These dark, smoky little coffee houses in church auditoriums, little coffee houses in downtown that were actually businesses, a few bars. And so I was pretty well convinced then that, my future was set. I was going to be a rock and roll star, and everything was going as planned. And I was also acting in plays. I was also acting in musicals because I could sing.
There you go.
And I had auditioned for Hair and got notice that I would be considered as an understudy. Unfortunately, I was already 2 weeks into basic training in the United States Air Force, because I joined the Air Force because my draft number in 1970 was 88, which was an absolute guarantee that I was going to go bye-bye. Right. So I joined the Air Force for 4 years to avoid the 2-year Army service.
That makes sense. That's some math there.
So in the service, by the time I got settled after my training, I'm now in England. Oh my, there's a great big coffee house on base. Oh my, they have live performers. And then they had a talent show for the base that was for the entire United States Air Force. I ended up winning the talent contest on bass for a singer. I was also part of a trio, and I was also the stand-up MC. So we kept winning in those categories. We won for England, and then we won for Europe. And then when we got for worldwide, we placed, but we didn't win. But we were invited to tour then all over the
I mean, you took Europe, and that's what the military is for.
I took Europe. Yeah, I was the Europe's best stand-up singer, best vocal group, and best stand-up MC guy.
Excellent. What did you perform, out of curiosity, or do you
the
remember?
Song? I remember we had 2 songs that we prepared that for our time slot, and the songs were one, "Green Green Grass of Home" was my song that I did as a solo, and then we did a medley that I had arranged of 2 songs from Godspell. Day by Day and Prepare Ye, and we rocked it. We were very good. And then the stand-up part, whatever I was faced with. So we were in Madrid at one point in time, and I was making jokes about Francisco Franco.
Oh boy.
We were on base. I would not have done that downtown. I'd still be there, starving to death in a cell. But wherever I was, I could find the humor in whatever was going on, or somebody that was in the audience. And I basically, all of my comedy has always been completely 100% ad-lib.
Excellent. That's more vibrant. I guess that would explain your fondness for Eddie Izzard.
I love Eddie Izzard. My hero was Robin Williams, and I'd like to think that I'm the Robin Williams of school administrators.
There you go.
Shazbot.
Didn't you have a sideshow piece briefly with Dana Carvey?
So I get out of the Air Force in 4 years. I'm now convinced that I'm going to be a rock and roll star again. I have a manager, and he gets me a gig down in Southern California and meets the man who was Dennis Wilson, who was the drummer for the Beach Boys. This guy's name was Mario. Okay, so my manager flies us down to Southern California, and I perform at this club in Beverly Hills, and I do okay. And then we end up back at Mario's place afterwards, and I had a demo tape that I had prepared. And Mario starts cutting up lines of cocaine on this glass top table. And that just wasn't going to be my gig. And also Mario's talking about he's going to take the songs that I've written, and he wants to put a new spin on the sound. And this is the sound that's coming out with Friday Night Live. The disco stuff.
Yes.
What is the name of that song?
Lights?
No, John Travolta.
It escapes me.
Saturday Night Fever.
No, there we go.
Yeah.
It's not
Senior
my generation.
So anyway, my manager, of course, is selling my soul to the devil, snorting up a whole bunch of happy powder, and Mario's cutting it up, and Mario's cat has a collar on that says Mario's cat, and so I'm thinking,
helpful.
This isn't going to be good for me. So I excused myself from the room, grabbed my guitar, hitchhiked to the airport, and flew home. And that was the end of my professional music career. After that, I did shows. I invested myself back into school, and I did lots of shows at Cal State University, and I was the opening act for a lot of comedians and Dana Carvey, and I did a couple of shows when he was there. And so I did Marshall Warfield, Dana Carvey, Whitney Brown, and a few others. It was fun.
Fair enough. All right. I think we're running out of time a little bit. Is there any last piece of advice you'd like to leave people before we go?
Yeah, never do cocaine with a guy named Mario who has a cat named Mario's cat would be my high advice.
That's the best advice. Just plumbing the depths of your experience, your entire life. Don't do cocaine with Mario and Mario's cat.
The actual thing is, if you have a dream, pursue it, because nobody else is going to make your dream come true. So
excellent.
Take care.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for now. Thank you very much, Mr. Dave Neves, for joining us on the Across the Table podcast. We hope to hear more of you soon.
Okay.
See you all next time.
All right.
Bye.